I'm from Lake St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a combat veteran from World War II. I went into service in September of '42 and went in as an aviation cadet. And I always wanted to be up in the air and fly, and hopefully wanted to be a pilot. But I will tell you later just how that all happened. I took my basic training at Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, in the aviation cadet unit. And before I was accepted in the aviation cadets, I had to take a screening test of a mental test and a physical, which entitled me to go in. There was 4 of us fellows that went down to try for this, and I was very lucky to be the one chosen to go in because of my mental and physical ability. I stayed down the barracks, which is Jefferson Barracks, which is outside of St. Louis, and because it was near home, which I lived in St. Louis at the time, I chose to take my basic training at Jefferson Barracks. In December of '42, I had completed my basic training there, and I was transferred to Nashville, Tennessee, which was the classification center in the eastern United States for the Air Force. Upon arriving there, I went through stiffer physicals, stiffer mental test, and psych test to see that I measured up to be an Air Force member. While there, I went in the physical test. I couldn't be a pilot or a bombardier because my eyes was not 20/20. They measured up to be 20/25. In that particular category, I was accepted as navigator because that was the minimum requirements for being a navigator. Navigator was 20/25 vision.
Put it through the middle, that wouldn't happen.
Okay, let's back up about 10 pieces, and we'll edit that back in. Go ahead. Yeah, picking up from when you said you came back with 20/25 in vision.
Oh, in classification. Right. I went to classification center, and to be a pilot or a bombardier and navigator, you had 20/20 vision. But because I had 20/25 vision, I could not become either of those, which I wanted to do. So the only choice left was the navigator, which I looked forward to because I had 20/25 vision. Upon that decision to become a navigator, I was sent down to Selman Field, Monroe, Louisiana, to start my pre-flight navigation training. I arrived there in February of '43, and upon arriving there, the pre-flight consisted of academics like physics and pre-college examinations and physical training. And this took a total of about 9 weeks. And upon graduation from there, I was accepted into advanced navigation school. Advanced navigation school, they would give you more of the core of how to navigate. Eventually, after taking some training in DR, dead reckoning navigation, pilotage, we were subject to flight school. And in flight training, we were, myself and the 2 other navigators would go up in a navigation trainer and do practice missions of learning how to navigate. This we did for a total of about 18 weeks. And we did this in the middle of the summer of Louisiana, which was quite hot. And we were allowed off base one night a week. One day would be, 1 week would be Saturday, and the next week would be Sunday. And we went to school during the day and in the evenings to cram as much as navigation that we could in this particular period of time. I graduated and got my wings in October of '43, and at which time they gave us all a 10-day pass to go home, and which made me feel real proud to wear the wings and go home and display tell people the kind of work that was training that I had to go through. Upon my end of my 10-day leave, I was to report to Davis Mountain Field in Arizona, where I was to join a crew. And at this time, I did not know what airplane I was going into. I knew I was going into a bomber, but didn't know which kind. And upon arrival at Davis Mountain, I found that I was going into a B-24. And at that particular place, I met my pilot, who happened to be from St. Louis too, and the rest of the crew. This particular field, we did our first phase training, which was to get the crew coordinated, the engineer with the pilot, the navigator with the pilot, and the bombardier with the pilot, to know how to perform missions. We also did practice missions with other B-24 crews, and upon the completion of this training, well, we had another phase to go through, which was a second and third phase. So we went down to, we were transferred we left our airplanes there, the training planes, and went down to Blythe, California, which is in the Mojave Desert. We were down there in January and February of 1943. Excuse me, 44. Time is flying. And we did our second phase and third phase down there in Blythe, California. Well, we were ready to go overseas as a replacement crew. At that particular time, because it was before D-Day, evidently they needed more B-24 groups in Europe, and so they decided to make our echelon a group in itself. So they transferred it up to Pueblo, Colorado, where we formed our own group. And the forming our own group, it means all your administrative personnel, your ground forces, your ground personnel to keep us up in the air. It took 9 men to keep one of us up in the air. So you know that we had to have a large ground complement to do this. So we stayed up there from February, March, and April, and to make this group work. So we got our second and third phase all over again. So we didn't know what theater of operations we were destined to go to, the Pacific or Europe at the time. So because B-24s was used in all theaters. And so we finally got the message. We didn't know exactly, but we do have an idea because of our uniforms that we had to take along with us. So we found out we were going to England. The first place we had, I'll go backtrack myself a little bit. While we were there as a group, they flew in a bunch of new B-24s for us to take overseas with our group. And this particular airplane that we had, we named it Dolores. Dolores was the pilot's wife's name. She often said, I don't know what was Dolores about her. But anyway, the plane was named Dolores. And so we proceeded on schedule to fly over to England. And this was indeed a command of my navigation experience, because I was the navigator in the plane, and I had to look forward to flying overseas.
The last time they were here, they spent almost all day.
Oh, guys.
Flying overseas. So the thing is, we flew down to Miami Beach. It was our first stop before we went overseas. We flew to San Juan, Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Belém, Brazil, and finally ended up in Natal, Brazil, flying over the jungles and the Amazon River, which is the first time I ever had seen this particular area. Now the next thing was a big hop across the South Atlantic. Now we had theoretically flown this flight in class across the Atlantic, which was about 1,100 miles that we were going to fly, which was our longest leg of our flight overseas. And of course, this was the first time that we had to use celestial navigation in this particular flight. When we took off, getting ready to take off at Natal, Brazil, we pre-flighted the airplanes to see if everything was functioning in our particular airplane. And then they turned off the engines and they refilled our gas tanks to be sure that we had enough, because we were stretching the B-24 to the maximum on this particular flight. We took off real early in the morning so that we could make some celestial fixes out over the water, because there was no pinpoints, no pilotage, or of course there's always dead reckoning, and to get a good course line. So we took off in the early morning so that we could have the use of the stars to fly. Now each one of our ships had their own navigator, which was doing their own particular job. By then we had to depend on dead reckoning, and we had to take double drifts off of the waves, which was the only thing that we could use to catch the wind direction. And halfway out, we were out, and all by all by ourselves, and halfway out, we saw another B-25, another B-24 flying about 20 degrees off our heading. I don't know whether the man was on a double drift or what he was doing, because when you're off 20 degrees out there, Lord only knows where you're going to have to end up at. But I never did hear out who it was or what happened. All I know, that was the first airplane and the only airplane we saw on the way over. They told us at school that when we took these theoretical flights in the South Atlantic, the navigator was supposed to, when you had an ETA, say probably at 4:30, that's what you figured out from your computations, by telling them 4:40 or 4:45. Because if we're there, we're there. But if you're not there at 4:30, which you should be, why, then all the crew and everybody, they start asking questions, what's happening and everything. So if we're there and the ETA is written out, why then do we figure out, well, nobody's worried about what the ETA was. But that would, you could tell at the particular time that you were coming across the plane. Because you could see a haze on the horizon that we were in a short distance from it. They warned us ahead of time not to depend on radio navigation, because they said a station was set up in the French Senegal, which was just south of our destination, and not to pay too much attention because a base has been set up down there, and not to follow it, because if we start homing in on it, we'd end up where they were. We didn't want to do that. So you had to depend on your Celestial navigation to begin with, and your net record, and hopefully that it would work out. So we landed in Dakar, Africa, and it was one of our first surprises of our flight, which we have never done. We landed on one of these metal runways. And talk about noise, the B-24 was noisy, but this increased the amount of noise that we had to contend with, which was a very much surprise. But every one of these takeoff and landings was usually an overnight situation. We land there in the evening and then take off the next day. And each plane would stagger itself as far as taking off that particular time. But when we were in Dakar, Africa, and we flew up to Marrakech. Well, we had to fly up Marrakech. We flew up the part of the Sahara Desert, and there was actually no pinpoints that we could pick up. The only thing I could see was almost like a pyramid, a rock sticking out of the Sahara Desert, which was our checkpoint, our ground speed point. And you can look out the window and see it, and that was on the map. This that point of rock sticking out of and it had a figure your ground speed. You had to go up so far and then make a dog leg in through the mountains, not over them, through the mountains, up a canyon to Marrakech, which was on the other side of the range of the mountains. So lucky I was, I don't know, that good a navigator or what, but I was able to make a left turn now. And we went through the mountains, and there was a lot of turbulence there because it was about 14,000 feet over the mountains. And naturally you didn't want to climb up because we were flying about 7 or 8 there, and we didn't want to go to the mountains. And after we got through the mountains, there was the airport just on the other side, which is Marrakech. And this was a transfer part of the planes. We saw some war worries coming out of England that were flying back to the States. And it was a kind of conglomeration, and of course a lot of planes were flying to England, they would land there. And I was utterly amazed. Some of the pilots were bad at their navigators because their navigator didn't find this canyon. They had to go up to 14,000 feet and fly over. And it was just a stroke of luck on my part. I mean, trying to achieve this canyon, find it. So we did find it and we got through, but the pilot and the co-pilot, they had to fly it through because they couldn't put an automatic pilot because it was so turbulent in this canyon. And well, we stayed at Marrakech, and so the weather in England was pretty bad at the time, and the next stop would be England from Marrakech. And so we stayed there about a week because of the weather conditions up in England. They didn't want us to fly up there with an area that we're not familiar with and under such conditions, because England really had some rough weather. So anyway, the weather was okay, and we took off and went up there, and I could always, they told us, navigators, particularly when we were going up the coast of Spain, be particular about flying off the coast of Spain, which was not our cup of tea. And I was flying up, my radio operator that I had talked to some time ago had mentioned that he remembered me talking over the mic that over the intercom that there was a coast of Spain over to the right, and pressed over there. And he remembers me calling the crew's attention to that what it was over, because they asked me what it was. So we flew to England, and then as we got up there, why all our planes were we found our airport, and it was hard to find the airport because there were so many of them up there, and we're talking out of takeoff pattern distance from each other, because they had so many planes flying out of England at the time. So we landed up there in Medfield, England, and we stayed there. Let's see, we landed in Medfield, England, and so we got up there right before D-Day. D-Day. And we did 4 or 5 missions before D-Day, and after some practice missions to get everybody used to the English terrain and flying in formation and understanding the radio signals and the stress calls and the bunchers of what we were supposed to adhere to when we were getting in formation before we fly to Europe. So after D-Day, I was not fortunate to fly because I was on a lead crew, and lead crews only flew about every 3 days. And because they had to be sure that their planes were operational with the bombardier and the automatic pilot, because the pilot and the automatic pilot, the bombardier, worked in conjunction with each other over the target. And those, they're the ones, the lead crew was usually the ones that bombed on the target, and everybody bombed off of them. And so we didn't fly every day, and so as a result, my missions didn't accrue as much as some of the wingmen who flew every day when the weather was okay. But anyway, after many missions, the first time we lost one of our members of our crew. We didn't lose him. He was wounded in one of our raids over Paris. And we were flying this particular mission, and the lead crew FA automatic pilot wasn't synchronizing with the bomb sight, so we could not bomb off of the lead crew because our bombs would go every which way but on a target. So they decided to circle the target again, and we were deputy lead, and we were going to take their place. As we were circling to come back and take their place, by a flak battery patterned our airplane, blew the bombardier's paddle off the wall, shredded my log. I don't know how I kept from getting hit, and the crux of the whole thing, our pilot got hit in the left leg. And that was before they put armor plate by the pilot's window to keep the pilot from getting injured, because naturally he controls the airplane along with the co-pilot. So when we got hit, it knocked out our intercom, knocked out our oxygen. So we didn't have any oxygen, couldn't talk to each other because the intercom was knocked out. One of the engines was hit, and the pilot was hit. And of course, they took him out of the pilot's seat and laid him on the floor to give him morphine for his wound. The co-pilot took over, and of course, it was up to me to give him the directions how to get back home, because we were going to go back by ourselves. We were just outside of Paris, France, and we were to go back by ourselves. He couldn't hear me. I'm in the front nose of the B-24, and I stood up on the ammunition box into the Astrodome, which we usually took our celestial shots on, and gave the count by the fingers of what direction, what heading we should take, which was 270, and which he took and went back to our field. And upon arriving at our field, we proceeded to land. And with all the holes we had through our airplane, I don't know how many holes was in the airplane, but we were very fortunate. Only one of us get injured. And considering all the flak, in other words, we were hit by flak, which really put holes in the aluminum skin of our airplane. We were assigned another pilot, and he was a wingman, and he proceeded to be our pilot on our crew, and he brought his navigator with him that he had flown quite a few missions with. I was put up into the into the nose turret as a pilotage navigator. The pilotage navigator's job was to help the bombardier guide the plane into from the IP, which is the initial point of your bomb run, into the target. The thing is that is his biggest job. Of course, being in a nose turret, you have to use the nose turret guns if you're going to have against fighters. And so this was my job as a pilotage navigator up to our last mission, we had a mission to Duisburg, Germany, which was an oil refinery, which was outside of Hanover, Germany. We flew this day. We flew with a different wing, and we were substituted, our group, for another group because of our low casualty rate. Not to say that they wanted to inflict more casualties than us, but because we had such a good combat rating, and our formation was good. Not saying that the other ones were, but I mean, we kind of evidently must have stood out for somebody to judge that we had good formation flying. And so we were substituted for another group and was supposed to fly Charlie and Charlie to bomb in Pittsburgh. When we were at the IP going into the target, why we had fighter protection all the way up to the target, and we were approached by enemy fighters, which the our fighters, friendly fighters, took over and pursued. And at that particular time, why they drew our fighters off of our group protection. We were going from the IP, and when you go from the IP to target, you uncover. In other words, each squadron goes in by itself. We were the last squadron, which was a high squadron. Well, another group of fighters, German fighters, were sitting waiting for they sucked off our fighters, and they came in at us, about 200 of them. And I say 200, that's what I'm reading the stats on. I didn't count every which one, but that's what they say that approached us. And they came in broadside and gave us the blast with their 20 millimeters, and they picked on the last plane first and worked their way up to the front until finally we were flying in the deputy lead of the high squadron. And we were able to finish our run over the target by the time they got to us. And by the time the high squadron was gone, that's about 10 airplanes, and then they started working on the low squadron, and we got half of them. But to go with my experience, the rest of the squadron had made it back to the field, and from the things that I read about, why the people on the ground would wait for us to come back. Why they couldn't believe it, because we had never lost more than 2 planes out of any particular raid before. And they just couldn't believe that this would happen. And you're talking about men and crew chiefs that waited on the ground. They couldn't believe that their plane didn't come back. Of course, it was a nerve ball, because the opposition that we ran into. But to get on with my story, when I was in this, I could understand that we were having a fighter attack, and the first thing you know, why the planes start moving up and down, not like it was out of control, but it was not flying normal. And I had a warning bell sound. And the thing is, which is the intention, if I ever hear this up in the air, that means I got to jump. If you're on the ground when they pre-flight it, why, there's no problem. But the thing is, when you hear it up in the air, the only way to go is out. And so I knew that there was something wrong with the airplane, and I proceeded to open the hatch for the nose wheel door, and I bailed out there. Now, if you want to know what kind of conditions we were in at that particular time, we were about 24,000 feet. Temperature about 50 degrees below zero. And we didn't have any pressurized cabins. The only heat that we had was our heated suits, which is from a cord out of the wall. And with this decision to make, I'm often asked this, did it take anything decision to jump out? No, it's no decision. You just go where it's got to be safer than where I'm at. And crews that returned back said our plane had exploded before it ever hit the ground because it was on fire. And well, after I jumped out, well, I delayed my chute. I don't know how far I delayed it, but the noise of the airplanes and the fighting and everything, it all disappeared. And so I pulled the chute automatically. And so I floated down, and it was a beautiful sunlight day. It was on Sunday, and you wonder, at this particular mission, I was on 27 missions, and I had 3 more missions to go, and I had hoped to be back by Christmas, as this was November the 26th, 1944. And upon approaching the ground, I'd never jumped before, and I didn't know what I would kind of impact, how to prepare for it, or what to do. I mean, you could read all the books you want about it, but when you're doing it, it seems different. And so I didn't know what kind of reception I was going to get on the ground. And as I approached the ground, well, I didn't brace myself at all. All of a sudden, I'm on the ground, and I folded up like an accordion. And you didn't think you could bend that fast, but here I was. Well, the wind was so strong that day. The wind took the parachute, and there was no way that I could regain my feet to get up and hook it. And so I was being dragged along the ground, and my Parker was being shredded off of on the one side, and I was trying to pull myself up the gain to get on my feet, but there was no way. And so all of a sudden I stopped, and I couldn't figure out what had happened. You know, why did I stop all of a sudden? Because your mind just doesn't work that way. Well, as soon as I stopped, I jumped up to my feet, and that's why I wanted to get out of the harness, because the chute had served its purpose. And so upon unhooking the chute and everything, well, I heard a lot of talking and chattering, and here the German peasants took my chute and ran away with it. And so here I'm standing out in the open field looking what next. So it didn't take me long to find that out, because all of a sudden a German soldier was walking over towards me with his gun, and actually I didn't run because fear of them trying to take a pot shot. I wanted to get in military hands as soon as possible, because I had heard about what the peasants do, which I could understand why they're mad at us. So anyway, he searched me, no gun, took my escape kit and my watch, and told me to go ahead towards the road, and I preceded him, and he had his gun right behind me. And we got to the road and started walking down the road, and upon walking down the road, there was an old man in a cane walking up towards me. And it didn't bother me too bad. It was just a man walking up towards me with a cane. And he got up opposite me, and he says, "Yank or British?" And Chris, "Yank, tell him the truth." And as soon as I said yank, he picked up his cane and hit me over the head, right here. And I have the scar to prove it to myself of back in those days of just what happened. Of course, when he did that, I wasn't going to stay around there for a second knock. So I ran him down into a ditch and tried not to go too far to give the guard a chance to shoot at me. So I stayed down there, and he didn't want that to happen and be beaten up. So he told the old man to go away. I mean, go down the road, go about his business. And he motioned for me to come back on the road. So he proceeded to take me down the road, and as going into this town, well, I saw my co-pilot carrying his parachute coming from another direction with a guard behind him. So we joined forces there, and of course my one eye was bleeding, and I was kind of holding it. My eyebrow was bleeding, and they took me up to a first aid station and put some white powder, which was probably sulfite, and put a piece of adhesive tape on it, and would stop the bleeding. So they proceeded to take us to a shower room, and probably the military version, and there was about 10 of us in there, some from the B-24s. There was some B-17 gunner that was in there, was shot down that day too. These are all people that were shot down that day. And we stayed there till the evening, and they took our shoes away from us so we wouldn't try to escape it or anything. So they trucked them by and picked us up and took us into Hanover that night. And of course we could see what the bombs had done to this town. And we stayed there throughout to a barracks of some sort there, and the German officer interrogated us, and of course their intelligence must really been something, because they were able to tell us what crew we were on. Of course we gave them the name, rank, and serial numbers, and they told us what crew we were on, what people didn't make it, which we didn't know at that time because we all bailed out. We thought we all bailed out, but it just so happened that 5 of them did not bail out. Because they were probably wounded or killed in the air battle, or might say the fire was too much for them, or they couldn't, I don't say couldn't take it, but they were probably injured in some way that they couldn't make it to get out the parachute. So 5 of us got out of the 10 men that were in the airplane. And so we stayed there that evening, and they gave us a little bit of sausage, which was the first meal that we had since morning. And they assigned 2 guards to us, and they took us out the next day. We were over in Hanover, Germany, which is the middle part of Germany, and their indoctrination place for POWs was in Frankfurt, Germany, which is a very hostile area because it was right in the Ruhr Valley, and there was a lot of bombing and a lot of POW atrocities committed there. And of course we went by private train to Frankfurt, Germany, and we had 2 guards with us, and of course we stuck close to them because we didn't, and every time we stopped at a station to switch trains, they would take us off at a little park away from the people because they didn't want any riots or anything else to be to happen to us, or any injuries to happen to us. So anyway, we went to Frankfurt, and then we went to Oberursel, which is a interrogation area where we were put in solitary confinement for 2 days, and then we were interviewed and debriefed by a German officer who spoke very good English. And the room we went into, he saluted us, gave us all the respect that we deserved, and on the top of the briefing board behind us, the map of Europe, he tried to confirm our course that particular day on this mission, to see if their intelligence was up to what actually happened. And but all we had to do was give our name, rank, and serial number, and that was sufficient. So we stayed there 1 or 2 days, and then we went over to an area where they were able to give us a decent hot meal. And if we had flying boots, they would give us regular shoes, and so that we had an overcoat if someone didn't have sufficient outerwear to be in Germany during the winter, because this is winter time. So after we were interrogated, they released us and put us on a prison train to go to our destination, which we did not know where it was. This particular train had RAF flyers and American flyers on it, and it was a complete train with barred windows on it. And we proceeded to go in an easterly direction to our prison camp. One of the nights as we were traveling along, one of the fellows looked out the window and saw a flare come out of the sky, and because we never flown at nighttime, we didn't know what it was, and some of the RAF flyers, well, that's a target indicator. It means that we were close to their target. The RAF was flying at night. So they didn't know we were down there, so they proceeded to drop their bombs. And we could see over in the distance some kind of facility was on fire as a result of the bombs. So we were going right through the target area, and I commend that German engineer who kept that train going. And while this was all going on, they had 88 anti-aircraft guns were going off, either on railroad cars. It was very close to us because we could feel the concussion of the aircraft going on. So we were, for the first time, we were on the other end of the flak that we used to persevere against up in the air. So we continued on, and we finally stopped in Berlin. We had to go through Berlin to get to our target, and we were in the marshalling yards. Well, we looked out the window, and they were fixing up the damage that they had done the night before. The RAF used to send mosquito bombers over to drop their powder as a nuisance raid, just to drop it on the marshalling yards, just to disrupt their ammunition factories, and everybody stopped what they're doing. But anyway, this was December the 7th, 1944. And because it was the anniversary of Pearl Harbor Day, we wondered whether the RAF or the 8th Air Force would send over a big mass as a token of the anniversary of D-Day, or Pearl Harbor Day, excuse me. And here we're sitting in there in the rail car, no place to go. I mean, we would like to get out of here because we don't know what's going to happen next. So luckily, while we just stayed there in the morning and that afternoon while we took off to our camp, which was in Barth, Germany, which is the northern part of Germany, about 45 miles from Sweden. But it was all water. There was no way we could get from there without help. But anyway, we went north to Barth, Germany, which is Stalag Luft 1. And we arrived there, and they had a whole new compound, brand new compound set up for us. In other words, they must have been expecting us, but they had room enough for us. In other words, we didn't have to double up with anybody else. But they already had 3 compounds up there already. Some of the fellows had been there 18 months to 2 years already from the 8th Air Force and from the RAF. We were up in Barth, Germany up there, and at Stalag Luft 1. And it was a different type of lifestyle, but the thing is, the lifestyle you didn't mind so much. At least you were alive and had to look forward to eventually getting back home, but you didn't know how long the war was going to last or how long you were going to be here. And the thing is, we were getting Red Cross parcels there, which we were thankful for the Red Cross, what they had sent to us. And but the thing is, they didn't last forever because the idea they had to get them to us. And the thing is that because we were shooting up their trains, all our methods of transportation, why naturally it took them longer to get to us what we needed. We were allowed 1 Red Cross parcel a week, and that kind of went down almost to nothing. And we were lived on mostly on rudabakers, which I had a lot of, and which I never did eat before, and I probably never eat again. All I can say about this war experience, it's the only way that I could think of saving money and losing weight. And the thing is, I don't recommend it, the losing weight bit, because you just, you had to share your food, but it's 24 men in one room, and you had to get along. You slept on straw bunks, which you took apart every once in a while and fluffed the straw out, make it about 18 inches high, and then by the end of the week, I was down like sleeping on a board again.
Do you certify and declare what my
Most of the people who was with us was all officers, not to say that we demanded special treatment. We just went where they told us to go. And Colonel Kabreski was down at the end of the hall. He was an ace in the 8th Air Force, and Colonel Zeppi was our CO, who was a West Point graduate, and he was our CO and did a lot for us. After being there about 6 months of trying to take care of yourself, making your clothes do, playing cards, and going, they had some of the prisoners, they were former teachers, and they were giving us classes on their particular subject. And to help the time pass faster while we attended these classes, just, in other words, you didn't want to waste your time 6 months of this, because we didn't know it was 6 months. And some people asked, well, did you know how the war was going? Well, we did know how the war was going because each one of the barracks had a radio. And the thing is that they would listen to the BBC on this radio. Now, the Germans didn't like that. They would have searches every once in a while looking for these radios. But these Americans were very ingenious and knew how to dismantle the radio and put it away, and so nobody would be able to locate it. So anyway, they were able, I don't know how they did this. I didn't ask questions or anything. We got a newspaper every night, which we passed from room to room. Of course, they didn't let a lot of them fly around like that, but we would pass it to room, and they would give us what the BBC would say about how the war was going on. And the thing is, we longed to see naturally how the war was going. And of course, when the time came, the Battle of Bulge, we didn't know what was going on, because it seemed like the war was reversing itself. We thought Germany was on their way down. Where'd they get all this? And of course, a lot of questions we couldn't answer, and a lot of other people couldn't answer. But anyway, as time went on and our food got less and less, we knew it wouldn't be long that we would be out of there. And we felt that we were real fortunate after getting out. The present day, after watching other tapes from other camps, I felt we were really lucky because we did not have to march. We stayed right there for the Russians to come and liberate us. And we could hear them coming because we could hear the guns getting closer. And finally the Russians did get there. And I found out later they wanted to march us out of there somewhere to another place, which is very difficult to do when you got men that haven't eaten for a while and had let's put it this way, on a low-calorie diet, and they're not about up to March, especially when it's in March and April. And in other words, the Germans did not want the Russians or the Allied forces to get us. They wanted to continue the marches because a lot of the prison camps in southern Germany, they had to march them out in February, and they put them in boxcars and cars. And our group reunion is the same time. Thank you very much.
So let's pick it up from when they were talking about the Russians liberated your camp.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
What's this for?
The Russians liberated our camp and everything, and the first thing they asked was whether they had any food. And the thing is, of course, we didn't have, and so what they went and done is they went out and located a bunch of cattle and shot them and butchered them and brought the meat back to us so that we'd have some food. We had rutabagas, always had plenty of rutabagas, but we didn't have that meat stuff. So anyway, they made sure that we stayed there about a week. And of course, some of the fellows were interested in getting out of there, of taking off and going across country. And that was not my cup of tea because I thought that was real foolish, because here you're going out by yourself in civilian clothes across country if you didn't have any knowledge of German. And of course, there was a lot of Nazi troops that hadn't surrendered yet, and who knows, they might take a shot at you. So I thought the safest place that the Air Force brought me here to Germany, and they're going to have to take me back. Not being selfish about it, I thought it was the sane way to go. And so we waited there, and of course we listened to the BBC, and General Eisenhower was on the radio and made a speech to the POWs. And he said, anybody who was listening, just stay where you are. We will come and get you. And so it was just a matter of a few days why a bunch of B-17s were flying in. And they had 300 B-17s that came and picked us up. And they had lost the B-17s. I don't know what they thought we were carrying, but I mean, it's probably some of them were a lot more shape than we were as far as cleanliness is concerned. And because we had almost the original clothes that we had when we were shot down. And so they came and picked us up. We had to march about 3 or 4 miles, on a walk to the airport where the B-17s took us back. We went back to, my memory slips me right now, Reims, France. And we landed there, and they took us to, in trucks, to a camp that they gave us the food that we hadn't had for so long. And of course it was nourishing food and everything. And the next thing was they gave us new clothes to wear, to get rid of all the clothes we had. And they took all the old clothes we had and threw in a trash bin to get rid of it, because they were not salvageable anymore. So anyway, we got all showers and all cleaned up and shaved and everything, and we were taken by a transport truck to Camp Lucky Strike, as they call it. It was outside of Le Havre, France. And this is where the port was to take us back to the States. And so we went back there. We slept in tents at each one of the camps they called Lucky Strike, Camels, 20 grand, and all the, of course this day and age wouldn't have cigarette names, but then they did, because most people smoked and everything. But anyway, we stayed there about a week, and then they somehow got us all together and put us on boats to take us back. We took a Liberty ship back to the United States. That was the first time that I had ever been on the water, on a naval transport, to go back to the States. And of course, a lot of the fellows got sick, seasick, going back, because their stomachs were more or less temperamental to the good food that we were getting now. And we made it back in the States about a week, and upon our landing at Newport News in Virginia, we were treated royally, and the sight of the United States was beyond comprehension of what we were glad to see again, and hopefully that we thought we would never see again. I mean, hopefully that we would see. But we were glad to get back, and particularly when we got back in the mess hall, they started putting bottles of milk on the mess hall table, and something we had never seen in well over a year. It was good, wholesome milk, and we got steak and everything else, and we were allowed to call home and let our parents know that we were back in the States again. In the meantime, all our parents was always kept up to date as far as the government knew of just what was happening to us. The time I was shot down, I want to commend the ham radio operators that worked during the war. Any of the German broadcasts that was, they would broadcast the prisoners' names. And it just so happened, I'm retracting myself a little bit, but I think this is very necessary to pay tribute to the ham radio operators, for those of you who are, of what they did during the war. And it was Christmas Eve when I was shot down on November the 26th. My folks did not hear from me, and until there was a notification over the German radio that I was a prisoner of war. And the ham radio operators picked it up from the German broadcast, and they called my folks and told me that I was a prisoner of war. Up to that time, they had no knowledge. The government didn't have any knowledge of that effect. So at least they know I was alive, and even though I was a prisoner of war. And they received notification that I was missing in action, and then later on they received notification that I was a prisoner of war. And all along this particular 6 months that I was over there, where the Red Cross kept my folks informed as much as they were able to, that the Red Cross parcels were being sent, and they got a pamphlet every month of what was being done for the prisoners. So this helped alleviate the worry that my folks had to go through about me being shot down. But I do, I'm thankful this day and everything when I look back of what has transpired over my life, and for years I never did think about it. I knew at the time that I was a lucky guy to come out of it, and I think about the unlucky fellows that didn't make it, fellows that I trained with over a year, and which you become real close to, flying on the same airplane and becoming close to. And when you're going overseas, you're close to them, and then all of a sudden when on your mission, they're taken away from you. And who knows why or what. I mean, you often think about what happened to them, why did it happen to me? Not that I wish it would, I wish it wouldn't happen to any of us. But it did happen, and you just have to live with it the rest of your life. Not that you did anything wrong, you wish you could have helped them, but there was no way. And it was just, it's just war, and war is hell. And so I will sign off. This is Ross Houston with the 491st Bomb Group, and I hope this message that I'm giving you will help you to understand what went on in some of the missions. And there's a lot more I could tell you, but I would suggest you listen to some of the World War II veterans to hear what they have to say, and they have a message for you. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yep.
You have to know that stuff's coming.
Yeah, they said they were out here with just yesterday.
Take a picture of you there?
Huh?
You picture of you standing by it?
Oh, we'll get that in a minute.
Before you get a lot of people out here. Guess you're not allowed anybody close to it now.
Okay.
I'm pressing this darn, when you press this is when you take it, right?
Yeah, you just press it down once.
Oh, once?
Yeah,
I've
what's
been
it
holding
doing?
it down, and it...
Now it's still recording. Now that's
Okay.
now it's recording.
Oh, all right, okay, all right.
You can move tight and back and forth and so on.
Can you push it back? fit your teeth.
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and take it the rest of the way. Now we know what's going on. And what's
Put us together and made us a group at Pueblo, Colorado. We took 2 more phases over. And by the time you got your ground echelon and also your flight echelon together, then we flew over. We got new planes at Pueblo, and then we all flew over individually. We went by the southern route to England. And of course, that was a challenge for navigators to fly the southern route. We flew individually and take that 11-hour flight from Natal, Brazil to Dakar, Africa, and by Marrakech and up to England. And then we all arrived, and we were the last B-24 group. We got there in April 44, and by the time we got activated with the ground crew and had practice missions and everything, we flew about 4 or 5 missions before D-Day. And I didn't fly D-Day. I was on a late crew, so that's why we didn't fly every day. It was really a challenge to fly the South Atlantic. All the training you do, when you're going through training and everything, oh, I hope I don't have to fly this, because they have a simulated flight. And lo and behold, why we did fly all the way, but it was a real challenge. When we got over there, and we were the 491st Bomb Group, we still have our organization together, and we lost over 300 men. Flying all the missions from the time we were activated to the time that after VA Day, and I was lead crew, so I didn't fly. I flew about every 3rd or 4th day, and I was Polynesian navigator. I flew in the nose turret for a while as a Polynesian navigator, and then I flew on the desk as a navigator for our crew. And on the 27th mission, we were shot down, and 5 of us got out, so we bailed out over Misburg. It was the only time we were struck by fighters, our bomb group, and they got half of our group that they got the presidential citation. That's really, and of course, half the group was able to drop the bombs on the target. We were approached by 200 fighters, German fighters, and they sucked their fighters off. We had fighters when we got there. And they decoyed our fighters off. That's how they fell for something. But after they found it, they thought they had the main group, and there's a bunch of them sitting way over the side. They knew the tactics of doing it, and then all of a sudden they reimpressed. They came up with 20mm cannons.
What were they, FW-190s or
FW-190s, yeah.
190s?
They had 3 of them together. They just come over and sit there and put the flaps down and sit there and shoot the 20mm cannon. All you had to do is hit that top bay of that B-24, and then they get them on fire, and then one by one they knocked the high group out first, and they caught us on the IP to the target, which is your most vulnerable spot when you uncover and fly in. So anyway, we landed. I landed in Germany on an open field, and 5 of our crew got out. They told us, the Germans told us that night, we lost 5 of them. Everything about us. It's amazing.
What month was that?
November 26, 44.
November 26,
44, yeah. It was on a Sunday. I'd forgotten what day it was. I mean, you don't, when you comment, you don't know one day from another, really. But it was a day like today, and you never thought anything would happen, but you had a feeling that you were out sitting there like sitting ducks, you know. I mean, we look back at history. I kind of go into this history. What happened to this mission? Why did we happen? But it seemed like that they pulled one group out. We were flying with a different wing that day, and that is the reason why what happened. But they put our group in because we had very minimal battle casualties in our group, and they considered our group a very good formation group because we had 5 phases. The pilots had 5 phases of training, and that's when you fly 5 phases, you get a lot of training and flights, practice flights, and things like that. So you always say put your wing in your plane in the other waist window, keep it in close, and the guys flew real close. But anyway, it just it was an experience, and I relive it all the time. I mean, try to keep in communication with your former crew members, and some of them do not wish to remember a lot of these things that happened. But as you see, I get involved with it. I go to all the reunions. I go to 8th Air Force reunions, 2nd ADA, which is, they had 3 divisions in England, and one of them was a B-24, and 2 of them were B-17s. And of course, they're having the 8th Air Force reunion in St. Louis this year. If anyone's interested, it's in September. And down at the, I think it's Adams Wharf, I think it is. Well, it's in downtown St. Louis. I don't remember.
How long were you a POW?
6 months. Solid Group 1. I read all the, there's a tape out about Under the Wire, which I saw a couple weeks ago. We had a country club comparison with some of the people in the South. And they, in fact, as the troops, the Russians and the Allied troops were getting close, they would take them out of camp and march them. We're talking in February and March, which is really cold. And you're talking to somebody with a low physical, I'd say, ability to do anything like that, and meager clothes, shoes, not used to. You're just just take care of yourself, just being where you are. But to go and march for 24 hours, like if you're like a foot soldier or something like that, and limited in food, and they put them in boxcars. And of course, I didn't. That's why I say I figured I had a country club, because when we were up there towards, we were liberated by the Russians up to VE Day, and so we didn't have to march. We were out of nowhere, and the war was almost about over, and so the Germans didn't want us to be turned over to the Russians, or I wouldn't want to be either, or even the Allied troops. They didn't want us to be turned over, so they took them out and marched them, and that had really a definite effect to the fellows who were prisoners. But we were in Solid Group 1. That's where most of the officers were up there. I was in this, in fact, have you ever heard of Colonel Krabreski? He's the 8th Air Force. He had a high, well, he had 25 planes, a high rate of planes that he shot down, and he was down at the end of our barracks. And the commanding officer of our compound was Colonel Zemke, which, if you're familiar with World War II, he was high echelon. In fact, he just passed away and wrote a book about some of the escapades over there. He was our CO.
He was up at Oshkosh 2 years ago.
Was he?
Yeah, Gabreski comes every year.
Yeah, I imagine so, because they're still pretty active in the, that was their life. I think some of them stayed in, and enjoyed their rewards or what their efforts were over the war.
Did they reassign you after you got out?
No, we came home and they gave us 60 days leave. And of course, while we were home, my BJ Day happened. And so, well, then we were all looking forward to getting home, naturally. And I was supposed to report to Miami Beach.
I have a question for both of you. Since both of you were there at BJ Day, right? There at BJ Day, right?
I seen off the coast of Okinawa.
How do you feel about our current president not having BJ Day this year?
Oh, is it? No celebration at all?
Not calling it BJ Day. That's what I would.
Victory Day?
It was in some other day. I think it's an absolute insult to you, gentlemen. I'm sorry. I won't get into politics, but I will as far as Enola Gay is concerned, because we fought very hard on Enola Gay to get that. They were going to really do some bad things, making Japan look like the Mexicans. People like this being fought to make so that we can enjoy the freedoms we have today. Guys like this and others that we'll see today and the rest of the tour tonight. If it wasn't for these gentlemen, I wouldn't have had my career. I don't think that we would all have the same lifestyle.
We think of our part, well, I would say it wasn't something, but I mean, the thing is the guys that gave everything in their life. Like we had 5 of our crew, and they were all in the 21s, 21-year-old, and one had a child he'd never had seen, the bombardier. And, I mean, this is what has happened. I mean, they did what they had to do. All of us did. There was no rules about it.
You all did your own thing. You made it. Everyone did something maybe a little bit different. Corey, not unusual, so much going on tonight. Really appreciate it. When you were flying to California, did you make any open sea rescues? I don't know if you were here when he
Yeah, I heard him.
an Army pilot flying
down. Yeah, no, he with them. So
you make some open sea rescues?
Yeah, that's an experience.
That had to be more the scariest thing in the world.
The Navy recommended you never make an open sea landing unless you just pushed into it. But it was strictly hanging it on the props just above the water, and then you pick out a swell coming to you like that. There was a snubbing post out on the nose of the Catalina. When you pick that swell out in front of you, you come under that snubbing post and chop the power and pull that yoke back in your stomach. You just land right on top of that, or just on the crest of that swell, and you go down and all this water just covers you. And you just never experience anything like that in your life. And then the problem, once you get on the water, is the people. You lose them. Some guy floating in the May West, all this sticking out of his head. And then to reverse the procedure to get it off, that's an experience too, because you just pull a yoke all the way back in your stomach, and it takes two people to do it almost, the co-pilot as well. And he's got his hand on the throttle right over yours, and you just push full military power, and you wait until that swell comes down. And remember that you got to get that hull out of the water. You got all this drag, and you just stall the airplane off of the water. That's what you do. As soon as that swell comes under the nose like that, and the next swell comes up, and your nose starts up like that, and just pull the cold going all the way to the firewall, and keep the yoke back, and almost it just kind of throws you out of the water, literally. About 65 knots stalling speed, and just keep the nose up, don't let the nose go down, and gradually pick up flying speed. Do a little brain while you're at it.
A whole lot.
We wait for the next wave.
Yeah.
The next wave's coming.
Don't let that nose down. Heavy seas, and there was an island nearby. You go and land on the leeward side of the island. It taxis around anywhere in the people world. You can lose them in the heavy seas.
You know, the fight's hard. I'm trying to talk to people. Just want to make sure what this looks like. Are you going to this level? I'd like to talk to someone. Get you talk to another group that's no. Because both are very articulate.
Right.
Try to put me to stay around for a while or something like that. Is it a problem?
Sure, that's fine.
Because I'd like to have, talk to some other folks
That'd be fine.
this afternoon. That'd be great.
Because I've been through Oshkosh twice.
Or have you? When were you up there last?
I saw this plane sitting there. They were bumping in the dust box.
Well, I'll tell you, this year we're going to have your airplane up there. And we're going to have the B-29.
Flight formation. Yeah.
There's going to be another three of them.
Diamond Lil will be up there.
That's Confederate Air Force.
Yes, that one's Confederate. It'll be along with the C-46. Check it to see if his name is. Yeah,
Neither one is.
They are 6As. I think there's 8 people like
Actually coming out of Vancouver. You're sitting on the ramp and you're sitting beautiful cattle celebrating the wing. The pilot sitting right there. The Canadian government said, you want to buy one of them? And,
They were pretty cheap, though, weren't they?
well, they used them for forest fire, and they were blazing them out, but it was beautiful sight.
That's why they were down there. So
We will probably have at least one and possibly 2 cats up there. One comes up from Texas, and Tony Edwards has that of it, and then the CAF
I was just trying to figure out.
we haven't had that one in the water. It's just been a land operation because right now their insurance is
Take an insurance.
Our bathroom's out in the hall. We didn't share it with anybody, but we had in the hallway.